Hi everyone, tarekith here, and today I wanted to do kind of a long-term review of the Roland MC-707. I've had mine since it first came out. I've been eagerly waiting for a Roland Groovebox for a long time, and I have to say, just to give you kind of the quick answer to all this, like I'm still really happy with it. It just works for me the way it's organized and everything's laid out. There's some things that aren't perfect about it that I don't like, of course, and I'll share those with you as well. But overall, like I'm pretty happy with this. I think Roland did a great job. I think it's a really good Groovebox. It works for me. It clicks with the way everything's laid out and organized, and I really appreciate that. In terms of the hardware, overall I really like it. This metal plate on the top, and then it's got, the kind of the plastic side and bottom. I know a lot of people don't like the plastic, but personally I've kind of come to really like it. I think it looks really good, and it keeps the weight down, which is nice because I take this with me like all over the house to work on music. So having a little bit lighter makes it a lot easier for just carrying around the house. And I still think it's like sturdy enough to live up to like life on the road. Like, I don't think that would be a problem at all. So the hardware gets like a real thumbs up for me. There's plenty of input and outputs on it. I like the mixer style layout for how they've organized like the main controls. Having like 8 sounds laid out this way just makes sense to me. The knobs feel good, the faders feel good. The use of color is great, how you can customize all the colors. For all the different channels, you can change colors. You can change the color of the pads in different modes, like mute mode can be different colors than clip mode or note mode, things like that. Just makes it really easy to find what you're looking for. The pads themselves, they're pretty good. It's been nice that Roland has been releasing updates to the 707 since it came out, and one of them is where they added a pad gain functionality over here in the velocity page. So in addition to kind of specifying how sensitive the pads are and how they respond like to your velocity ranges, you can also boost like how hard you have to hit them to trigger that velocity range, which was a big complaint I had initially. Like you had to hit the pads kind of hard for even soft velocities. It's not perfect. It's a lot better than it was. It's definitely not as good as Machine or say Push 2, but I think it's definitely, it's pretty close behind, and it's certainly playable for a device like this. On that note, I'm also glad Roland is still releasing updates. It's awesome that they're kind of supporting this after its release, sort of the way Innovation did with the circuit. Hopefully we'll see more from them on that. Yeah, so the hardware is great. I have no problem with it. The display is really well done. One of the things I like about this display is that I think Roland's done a really good job of kind of organizing things in a way and showing you like graphically what you're doing instead of just having like just text. This kind of Ableton style, song mode clip launcher thing is great. When you go into like sound editing for like the drum pads, like it's just really intuitive. Instantly like, oh, I'm editing drum sounds, versus like, oh, I'm editing a synth. Things like that. So I think having that kind of like graphical like eye candy, if you will, makes it really easy to like find your way around on the 707, even though there are a lot of options on it. So let's talk about kind of the synth engine since I'm here already. This is kind of one of my slight complaints. I don't even want to really call it a complaint, but I really like this kind of broad overview page they give you of the synth. As soon as you highlight an item, you have 2 pages of parameters for whatever you've highlighted. So you have 8 parameters you can control with these like kind of soft encoders. So it's really easy to kind of jump around, especially if you hold shift and use the arrow keys. Like you can really just jump around back and forth. It's pretty simple to navigate around and try to do what you want to do. And I think the most relevant parameters most of the time are the ones that they show you automatically. So that's fine. I spend most of my time here. Now, if you want to go deeper, you press enter whenever you have something highlighted. And this is where you get into the real guts of the synth programming. And I've kind of alluded to this before in my earlier review about being like a rabbit hole, and I still kind of feel that way. Like I almost never really, I'll be honest, go into that kind of deeper editing screen unless I'm just trying to boost the gain on an oscillator really fast. Like sometimes I just am crappy at gain staging and something's too quiet, and that's the only way to the only place I have to get gain. So, but otherwise, unless I'm doing stuff like that, just kind of real quick and dirty, like I don't really come into this deeper synth editing page. I just find it tedious. Like the text seems a little small for me, and there's just like endless pages of parameters in here. I like the fact that we have access to it, like if you need to tweak it, but it wouldn't be something that I wouldn't sit down at the 707 in this screen and design sounds. Like my brain just doesn't work like that. But this overview page, like I said, I think it works great. It's really easy to get to your mixer. So you have your delay and reverb sends, your level, you have the effect per channel. One of the cool things I learned just recently is I've got this kind of grader setup going with the Hydrasynth and OB6 is that you can actually apply effects from the synth engine to your inputs too. So I have one synth coming in the stereo returns, which function just like normal inputs, which is great. And I have another synth coming in the normal inputs, and I can use like the effects per channel. So basically insert effects in each channel from these great effects that Roland included in here on input sources. So that's really cool. I didn't expect that. I thought for sure that would be disabled since I didn't have like a tone actually loaded on the track. Let's see, what else? What else do I find kind of tedious on this? One of the things that definitely is tedious for me is saving on the 707. I'm going to try not to talk too much about this, but I save all the time. Like when I'm working on projects, it's how I like, it's like my form of undo. Like when I get something I know sounds good, I'll save it, and then I can tweak and explore and not have to worry about losing anything because I can just always go back to a point I knew sounded good. But on the 707, it just takes forever. So I'm going to use the save shortcuts even to kind of speed it up. I'm hold shift and function and then enter. And then we wait. And at this point, you don't even know if it's going to start saving. See, it took like a good, 4 or 5 seconds before the save process even began. And if you have a project with a lot of samples in it, the actual saving portion takes longer than that. So some of my bigger projects for my live sets, like it's like a 30-second plus wait just to save. And it's something I normally do just like out of habit all the time. So that to me is a little tedious. Loading projects is the same way. When you load a project, it can take a really long time. It's not something you're going to kind of do really quick on stage. I've tried different SD cards that were faster, and it didn't really seem to make any difference at all. Actually, I had a really fast SD card in there, and it actually made the process slower by a couple seconds. So I'm sticking with a card that came in there, but I wanted to point that out that like certain operations that have to do with the SD card, they can be kind of time consuming. And that's, for me, kind of one of the real downsides of the 707. It's such an intuitive and quick device to use until you have to save. And if you save a lot, then that just kind of comes to the forefront. So yeah, overall, those are kind of like my 2 big complaints. I guess I have one more, would be kind of the sound library that comes on the 707. There's 2 parts of this kind of complaint. Just recently in the last update to 1.5, they gave us the option to load sound files into the 707 from Roland Cloud. These are basically sound packs you can purchase for like 99 cents each. I think there's 20 of them. Each pack comes, I think, with like 20 or 30 new sounds that are mostly kind of electronic oriented. And in general, I think the sounds actually are pretty good. Like I felt like, for $1, it was well worth it. Like there were some new sounds to play with, and they weren't quite the same as some of the older sounds, which I'll talk about here in a second. But to access these new sounds, you load onto the SD card. Like it's really convoluted online. Like there's not a very good explanation of how to get it in the 707. And then once you figure it out, you'll go into like the separate sound file category in the browser. And we wait again, like, because I think it's loading the sounds from the SD card versus just having them in memory. So yeah, here's my list of sounds that I've got installed. I think I bought all 20 of them. And then to actually access the sounds in that pack, I have to import it, which again means we have to wait. And now here are the sounds in here, but one of the downsides of this new pack format that they're doing is you can't preview the presets in real time anymore. Like most of the normal tones, like as you scroll up and down the list and play the pads, you can actually play that sound that you're highlighting. And here you don't, you have to load it first, which means waiting again. I've got that channel turned off actually, sorry, so it's not coming through, but I just wanted to demonstrate that. So every time you want to try like a new sound or a new sound pack, you have to actually go through the whole load process. And these aren't actually integrated into the normal core library, which is up here in the preset menu. So yeah, it's kind of a shame. Like I'm glad they gave us new sounds, and I overall like the sounds, but it's just not as flexible as the core sounds are, and I wish there was a way they could achieve that. Like just the real-time preview, even if I had to wait a second or two, like at least then I can play it first and see what it sounds like. So hopefully they'll implement that in an update. One of the other things I wanted to point out about this too is in the factory library, there are a lot of sounds in a 707. There are like probably thousands of sounds in this. But at the same time, I think like 90% of those, like most people who get the MC-707 aren't really going to use them. Like Roland's going to give you like kind of some good stuff, right? Synth basses, leads, polys, sequences, different sound effects, like stuff you'd expect from a groovebox. But then we get into like kind of like more traditional instruments like electric piano, organs, harpsichords, like accordions, harmonicas. Like there are just like dozens and dozens of realistic instruments in here. And I can see the argument that, yeah, that's great. It's always better to have more potential for sound mangling than less. But at the same time, it just makes finding what you're looking for. You can just get stuck in that mode of just searching, presets forever instead of just like picking something and tweaking it to fit. And like I said, I think it just takes up space. Like you can't hide these at all. There's no way to like, there's no favorite system, unfortunately. So, every time you go into this menu looking for sounds, like you will have to deal with a lot of these other categories possibly that you just are never going to use. So, it's not really a complaint. I just wanted to point that out. Like there are a lot of sounds in here. And if you see that like listed as like a feature, like, oh, it's got like 1400 sounds or whatever, like, yeah, but a lot of those are going to be like realistic instruments. And even then, to be honest, like the samples they use they're not bad, but they're not like great. So a lot of the sounds in here probably, won't get used by most people. So there's still a lot of really good sounds in here though. They're like some of the synth sounds and whatnot are really good. So I'm not saying it sounds bad, just that there's a plethora of sounds in here you probably won't touch. Yeah, so those are really kind of like my three main complaints about the 707. I think overall, like Roland did a great job, like I mentioned before. Like it's definitely more performance oriented than creation oriented, I think. I find like the sound editing and drum editing, it's decently quick, and you can keep going down further layers if you need to fine tune more and more, which is good. And I think they did a good job of kind of segregating those things. But I think if you're somebody who likes to do like really deep sound design all the time, then that might get frustrating, having to be kind of stuck with these 4 encoders and this small screen. But if you're like me and you can just kind of stick to the higher up pages, like where just the basic parameters are exposed, and like I said, they're always really appropriate, and I think there's enough there to do so, then it can be really quick and intuitive to find your way around. So yeah, that's it. Still a huge fan of this. I like it a lot. I have no intention of selling this like some of the other gear I've been selling recently. And you'll definitely be hearing a lot more of this in the future. I know I talked most of this and didn't really play much, but some of the stuff I'm working on is not ready yet for public consumption. So as always, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'm happy to cover anything I didn't cover in this review. Until then, stay tuned. Shortly, I will have the ASM Hydrosynth review coming out, maybe next week. Talk to you then. Bye.